Morning of April 30th, 2026. A FedEx truck parked in front of the gates of a mansion in California. The delivery worker handed Meghan Markle a thick package. Inside was not a media contract or a gift. It was an 89-page legal dossier stamped with a red seal from Buckingham Palace. King Charles III had officially launched his blow. This document file was a list demanding the immediate return of 127 royal items worth nearly £3 million that Meghan was holding illegally. Will Meghan obediently box up and return this entire fortune? How will she face a prison sentence when the truth about the fire sale of Diana's diamonds is exposed? February 15th, 2026. King Charles III's private office on the second floor of Buckingham Palace. The London winter was freezing, the large glass windows clouded with condensation. The king sat in front of the marble fireplace, flipping through periodic internal financial reports. On the surface, everything in the palace still ran smoothly as it had for centuries. Diplomatic receptions still took place regularly every week. The press still focused their cameras on Prince William's tours. The fractured relationship between the royal family and the Sussexes seemed to have sunk into a cold silence after a series of noisy memoirs and documentaries. Meghan Markle was living 9,000 kilometers away in a sun-drenched mansion in Montecito, California. No more shouting phone calls, no more back and forth refuting press releases. But beneath that tranquility, a massive list of assets was silently being cross-checked every day. At exactly 10 o'clock on the morning of March 30th, 2026, that fake tranquility was officially shattered. An encrypted call from a private auction house in Switzerland was connected straight to the hotline of the Royal Asset Management Office. The report from the other end of the line brought shocking information. An anonymous representative was trying to appraise and offer for sale a cushion-cut diamond originating from Botswana. This was not an ordinary gemstone floating on the market. Its size, clarity, and cut perfectly matched the identification profile of the center diamond on the engagement ring Prince Harry had once given to Meghan. This stone had originally been removed from the personal collection of the late Princess Diana. Its appearance at a private auction house had crossed all limits of endurance. King Charles III immediately closed the financial file. The final leniency reserved for his second daughter-in-law evaporated right in that room, giving way to an uncompromising recovery campaign. To understand why Meghan keeping jewellery led to a massive legal dossier instead of a family squabble, you need to clearly grasp Buckingham Palace's core asset classification mechanism. Unlike ordinary people when receiving wedding gifts or birthday presents, royal members do not truly own the expensive items they wear on their bodies every day. Imagine the British royal family like a giant tech corporation. When you are hired as a senior executive, the company provides you with the newest laptop, a luxury car to meet clients, and the right to use a corporate credit card. You have the right to take them home, use them every day, lock them in a personal safe. But the moment you submit your resignation and step out the company door, you must return everything. You cannot take that laptop and sell it for money. Royal assets operate in precisely that exact manner. Sparkling crowns, pearl necklaces, diamond earrings, or even the art paintings decorating the bedroom are all classified by British law under the Crown Property category or belong to the royal collection. When Meghan Markle stepped into this family in 2017, she was granted the right to use countless expensive items to serve her public image when going on tours or attending parties. They were handed over along with internal borrowing records bearing the red seal of the Royal Treasury Management Department. When Meghan and Harry decided to leave, completely renouncing their status as full-time working royal members, legally speaking, her borrowing contracts also automatically terminated. Intentionally taking along and keeping these assets across the ocean was no longer a family dispute about gifts. In the eyes of British law, this was an act of misappropriating state assets. This mechanism handed King Charles III an absolute administrative weapon. He did not need to argue with Meghan in the press. He did not need to prove who was morally right or wrong. He only needed to use property law to legally recover everything. While Meghan still confidently strode on red carpets in America with sparkling jewellery, a massive legal campaign was silently initiated right underground at Buckingham Palace. The first covert action took place on April 2nd, 2026, in the secure meeting room of the Royal Library. King Charles personally signed an order establishing a special inventory task force. This group did not include diplomatic officials or royal family members. It consisted of 8 extremely elite individuals, 3 lawyers specializing in international property law, 2 gemstone appraisal experts, and 3 senior archivists. They were required to sign absolute non-disclosure agreements, forbidden from bringing personal phones into the working room. Their sole mission was to trace back everything that had ever passed through Meghan's hands since the day she got engaged. The result of this meeting was the birth of a miniature war room, operating completely isolated from other media departments of the palace. The second covert action took place continuously from April 5th to 25th. 3 archivists turned the Royal Collection Trust underground storage vault at Windsor Castle upside down. They extracted thousands of high-resolution photos from the Sussex's tours in Australia, Fiji, and South Africa. They scanned all dispatch receipts from 2017 to early 2020. They cross-checked every single stone, every single necklace, every small painting that had ever hung on the walls of the Frogmore Cottage residence before the couple left. The result of this intense streak of working days was precisely identifying the disappearance of a long list of artifacts, rather than just general suspicions from the rumours of the butler staff. Everything was put into an Excel spreadsheet with full dates of borrowing. The third covert action was carried out at the international level in the final week of April. The King's legal team sent dozens of secretly sealed legal documents to renowned fashion houses like Givenchy, Dior, and private jewellers in Europe. They demanded these brands provide copies of original invoices to verify who truly paid for the outfits and jewellery Meghan had claimed were personal gifts. The results collected were incredibly sharp. The majority of the expensive invoices were paid directly from the former Prince Charles's fund account, meaning from the cash flow of the Duchy of Cornwall, not Meghan's own pocket money. These pieces of ironclad evidence were firmly pinned to the dossier, completely cutting off all logical escape routes if Meghan wanted to use the excuse that these were items bought with private money. After 3 weeks of relentless work, the Royal Task Force placed the final report on King Charles's desk. The total number of assets illegally kept was not a few engagement rings or 1 or 2 tiaras, as the public often speculated. The exact number finalised on paper was 127 items. But the most unexpected detail that altered the entire nature of this sweep did not lie in the expensive diamond of the late Princess Diana or the designer dresses worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. It lay in item number 84 on the blacklist. Item number 84 was absolutely not jewellery. It was a solid gold fountain pen worth about £8,000. This pen originally belonged to the office stationery set of the late Queen Elizabeth II, borrowed by Meghan to sign a guest book at a diplomatic event in Oceania in 2018 and never returned to the archive box. Buckingham Palace, including a fountain pen, a seemingly very tiny and easily forgotten item amidst piles of massive assets in the 89-page indictment, broadcast an incredibly ruthless message from the King. They were not only targeting the material value of the 127 items, They were proving to Meghan that the palace's surveillance system knew clearly every breath, every touch of hers on any object owned by the dynasty. They scrutinized down to the very end, not missing even a signing pen, completely stripping the self-esteem of a woman who always wanted to build independent, autonomous image in America. This list was not merely a simple debt collection paper. It was a devastating psychological blow, exposing the terrifying meticulousness of the power apparatus when they are determined to back someone into a corner. Why did King Charles choose exactly this sensitive moment to unleash the annihilating blow? And what ruthless goal will the decision to reclaim these 127 items serve next? King Charles III wanted to recover the entire material legacy of the crown and completely eliminate Meghan Markle's ability to commercialize royal reputation on American soil. He did not only demand back the sparkling diamonds or the crystal-embellished evening gowns. He wanted to establish a steel boundary regarding law and ownership. The British Crown is not a free rental shop. The nation's assets, accumulated over many generations, cannot be turned into a bailout capital source for failed business projects in Hollywood. Charles needed to prove to the entire British public, those paying taxes to feed the dynasty, that he is a king who knows how to strictly protect his mother's legacy. He resolutely showed no leniency toward anyone daring to gut the royal treasury, even if it was the daughter-in-law he himself had led down the aisle. The first action proving this ruthless resolve took place in mid-March 2026. King Charles directly ordered the Lord Chamberlain to permanently erase Meghan Markle's name from the Royal Collection Privileged Access System. This order was not merely a simple administrative document. It included freezing all diplomatic accounts ever granted to her to contact jewellery designers and artisans in London. Any renowned jeweller on Bond Street, if discovered secretly polishing, repairing or appraising items for Meghan, would immediately be stripped of their licence to provide services to Buckingham Palace permanently. King Charles cut off all her avenues for asset maintenance and appraisal in the European market, completely isolating the luxury logistics network she had once relied on. The second action aimed straight at the origin of the past cash flows, a blow eliminating all defensive arguments. Charles ordered the chief financial officer of the Duchy of Cornwall to reopen all accounting ledgers from May 2018 to March 2020. He forced the best audit experts to turn over every single bank transfer receipt for fashion houses Dior, Givenchy, Oscar de la Renta. All money spent on dozens of Meghan's dresses, coats and accessories during her time as a royal daughter-in-law was printed out, stamped with a red seal confirming the cash flow origin stemmed from the prince's private fund. Charles manually arranged these undeniable pieces of financial evidence into a thick dossier. He prepared the evidence in advance to immediately smash any argument claiming those items worth hundreds of thousands of pounds were bought with the actress's personal pocket money. The deep reason pushing King Charles to this unfeeling action stemmed from a profound personal pain mixed with massive political pressure. He was the one who stepped out into the middle of St. George's Chapel, opening his arms to shelter and lead Meghan toward the altar when her biological father was absent. He had used millions of pounds of his personal money to support his son's couple in their tumultuous early years of marriage. The betrayal toward this king did not lie in their going on television to complain or writing books to badmouth. The betrayal lay in Meghan taking along items carrying the core symbolic nature of the royal family, siphoning their historical value to patch up an unsustainable, lavish lifestyle on the coast of California. King Charles understood that if he left Meghan alone to successfully sell Diana's diamond, the monarchical system would become a laughingstock in the eyes of other nations. The throne demanded he completely cast aside a father's soft-heartedness to act like the most ruthless protector of national treasures. Meghan Markle wanted to keep all 127 expensive items on the blacklist to maintain the facade of a powerful Duchess, while simultaneously using them as the sole source of money for a financial situation plummeting without breaks. The 14-bedroom mansion in Montecito gobbled up tens of thousands of dollars every month just for private security costs, landscape maintenance, and cooling systems alone. The million-dollar content production contracts with Spotify and streaming platforms had evaporated without a trace. New media projects were continuously stalled due to a lack of appeal. Meghan needed a massive capital source, and immediately. The royal jewellery lying dormant in the safe were not just beauty accessories for red carpet events. They were blank checks, the most highly liquid assets, easily convertible into the millions of dollars in cash she was holding in her hands right now. The first action proving this craving to convert assets was precisely the effort to fire sale the Botswana diamond that had once sat on the engagement ring. Meghan did not directly bring the ring to a local pawn shop to get noticed. In early March 2026, through an intermediary legal representative in America, she used a fake name to secretly contact a tight-lipped private auction house in Switzerland. She requested the silversmith to remove the cushion-cut diamond from its original gold ring setting. This behavior was aimed at deliberately erasing all identifying traces related to Prince Harry's original design drawing. She wanted to turn a historic royal keepsake, which had once attracted billions of gazes globally, into an anonymous gemstone floating on the high-end black market. This plan was laid out in hopes of raking in hundreds of thousands of pounds in cash without alerting Buckingham Palace's intelligence network. The second action took place in a more public and defiant manner under the flashlights of Hollywood media. At a high-profile fundraising gala in New York in late 2025, Meghan deliberately wore an exquisite pair of diamond earrings, originally belonging to the royal collection. She used these very items the palace was demanding back to create a regal halo, attracting the attention of media investors and tech billionaires present at the event. Meghan used British state assets as props to elevate her personal brand value in commercial negotiations in America. She continuously appeared before the cameras with items that the Asset Management Office had sent multiple warning letters demanding back. This appearance was Meghan's covert message to business partners that she still held the supreme privileges of the dynasty, regardless of all rifts. Meghan's survival and profiteering goals clashed fiercely with King Charles's will, due to a complete difference in the definition of asset ownership. For Meghan, the items she wore on her body during her time as a daughter-in-law were permanent gifts, worthy material compensations for the psychological traumas and media pressure she believed she had to bear while struggling to live in the royal family. She fully believed she had total right to dictate, use, or resell them. But for King Charles and Britain's strict legal system, there were no gifts given. They were state-owned assets, only granted for individuals to use while they were performing royal duties in the capacity of the dynasty's representatives. This core disagreement could not be resolved by pacifying family phone calls. It was a life-or-death clash between the American-style free personal ownership mindset and the British dynasty's rigid, centuries-old, ruthless heritage protection mechanism. The moment these two currents of will crashed into each other erupted in mid-April 2026. Buckingham Palace's expert task force officially sent a 30-day ultimatum to the law firm representing Meghan in Los Angeles. The final deadline was set for May 20th, 2026. If the 127 items were not carefully packed and transferred back to the royal representatives present in America, the harshest legal actions would be activated immediately. The warning from London was no longer confined within internal emails of a reminding nature. It had been upgraded into an international property dispute document, carrying the intimidating power of an entire power apparatus. Meghan's lead attorney, Ms. Hernandez, immediately arranged an online meeting via Zoom software with King Charles's senior legal team. During this tense call, Meghan's side tried to use delaying tactics and denied all legality of the list. Ms. Hernandez looked loudly and straight into the camera, asserting that her client had never signed any commercial lease contracts. The Los Angeles side argued that the majority of the jewelry were wedding gifts handed over by the late Queen Elizabeth II herself, and the outfits were sponsored by brands for the actress personally. Ms. Hernandez strongly demanded the palace withdraw the 30-day ultimatum immediately, arguing this was a deliberate act of mental harassment aimed at a woman who had withdrawn from royal duties years ago. However, King Charles's legal representatives were neither provoked nor flinched before the counter-threats. The veteran British lawyer sat silently before the screen, slowly opening a crisply colour-scanned document file. He did not argue emotionally or distinguish who was the one bearing trauma. He slowly read the identification codes of the 3 largest jewellery items along with the dispatch dates. Immediately, he projected straight onto the screen the receipts bearing the clear confirming signatures of Meghan's own former personal assistant from 2018. Every item bore a National Asset Crossing stamp. The palace side coldly declared that international law does not recognise personal memory or subjective emotions. The law only recognises signed records. This direct and fierce clash immediately cornered Meghan's team, exposing the weakness and holes in their legal arguments against a state machine prepared meticulously down to the smallest detail. The stubbornness, the refusal to cooperate, and the flimsy justifying arguments of the Los Angeles legal team pushed King Charles to an irreversible decision. On the gloomy afternoon of April 25th, the King sat alone in his office at Buckingham Palace. Before him, on the oak desk, was the 89-page long blacklist, finalised line by line by the Inventory Task Force. He no longer wanted to waste a single further moment on useless negotiations through a computer screen with the stubborn. King Charles picked up his black fountain pen, officially signing the absolute authorization order. This stroke of the pen allowed the palace's legal team to immediately shift from the civil return request step to the step of threatening criminal prosecution. He decided to use the most heavy-handed National Asset Protection Act. The 89-page list was carefully packaged, sealed with Buckingham Palace's red wax, and handed to the FedEx Express delivery service to be sent straight to Meghan Markle's door in California. The decision to sign this authorization paper changed the entire dynamic of the confrontation. It completely ended Meghan's illusion about a family squabble that could easily be resolved with tears on American television talk shows. King Charles had officially turned his former daughter-in-law into a target in the crosshairs of a large-scale asset misappropriation investigation. If Meghan did not comply with the deadline, she would have to face court subpoenas, completely shattering the image of an upper-class social activist she had taken pains to build for so long. When the package bearing the weight of that criminal sentence knocked on the Montecito mansion's door, how would Meghan Markle react to the perfect legal indictment that the London power apparatus had just laid out? On the morning of April 30th, 2026, a FedEx delivery truck pulled to a halt before the security gates of the villa compound in Montecito. The delivery worker demanded a direct signature from the recipient instead of just leaving the package on the porch as usual. Meghan Markle personally received a flat but heavy parcel box. When she brought it into the living room and tore off the seal, she did not find any greeting or personal letter. Inside was a legal dossier exactly 89 pages thick, carefully bound and bearing the glaring red stamp of Buckingham Palace's legal department. Each page was a list detailed to a ruthless degree. The dossier clearly colour-printed images of the 127 asset items, accompanied by archival identification codes, dispatch dates, and the confirming borrowing signatures of the very assistants who had once worked for her. Meghan immediately picked up her phone, dialing straight to the office of Ms. Hernandez, her powerful representative lawyer in Los Angeles. The other end of the line picked up as Meghan was quickly flipping through the document pages with rapid breaths. She pointed to page number 14, where an emerald-studded necklace worth nearly £500,000 was pictured, complaining loudly over the phone that this was clearly a wedding gift handed to her by the royal members themselves. Meghan demanded the legal team immediately draft a protest document accusing Buckingham Palace of mentally harassing and smearing her honour with worthless pieces of paper. She firmly believed that no one had the right to demand back things that had been worn on her body before millions of television viewers. However, the veteran lawyer on the other end of the line did not play along with her client's anger. Ms. Hernandez asked Meghan to calm down and carefully read the italicized text at the bottom corner of the first page. It was an extract from the National Asset Management Act. The lawyer coldly poured a bucket of cold water on Meghan's arguments, explaining clearly that in the British dynasty's legal system, the concept of high-value personal gifts from the archives did not exist. All that Meghan was holding was merely a conditional borrowing contract. The moment she officially renounced her royal duties and moved to America, all privileges to use those assets immediately lost their legal validity. Ms. Hernandez affirmed this was not an ordinary threatening letter, but the final preparatory step for a large-scale civil lawsuit aimed straight at the charge of asset misappropriation. This legal truth completely smashed Meghan's confident facade, forcing her to realize that lawyers in America were completely powerless before the power of the royal treasury. Realizing her expensive legal team could not find a legal loophole to retain the massive fortune, Meghan decided to change tactics. On the afternoon of May 2nd, 2026, she decided to bypass the official communication channels between the two legal teams. She stepped into her private office, locked the door tight, and used an encrypted phone line to call directly back to London. Meghan aimed to contact King Charles III's private office, hoping to use family ties and the image of his grandchildren to negotiate a deal to keep half of the jewellery. She believed the king would not want to blow things out of proportion and face a media scandal smearing the royal image right on the cusp of major anniversary events. The call was connected to Buckingham Palace, but the person who picked up was not King Charles, nor any familiar secretary who had ever worked with her. A low, even male voice rang out on the other end of the line. It was the head of the audit and legal department of the Duchy of Cornwall. Meghan tried to keep a soft tone, mentioning sending back a few unimportant items and asking to keep those carrying a private, commemorative nature. Responding to that fake concession was a freezing silence lasting several seconds. The palace's legal representative did not care at all about the emotional explanations. He merely repeated exactly one single sentence with a razor-sharp timbre. Either you return the full 127 items before May 20th, or you will receive a subpoena to appear at the High Court in London. Just as Meghan was about to hang up in frustration, the lawyer in London unexpectedly threw out a detail that made her freeze completely. He did not reiterate the 89-page list, but merely asked Meghan directly about the current status of the teardrop-shaped sapphire pendant originating from the Dutch royal family. He calmly read out the exact name of the private broker in Switzerland whom Meghan had secretly contacted last month, while clearly stating the asking price she had offered. This unexpected detail proved that Buckingham Palace's intelligence network had been closely tracking every single one of her underground transactions on the black market. They did not send the 89-page list to ask what she still kept. They sent it because they knew exactly what she had lost. The negotiation collapsed completely when Meghan realized she was not confronting a soft-hearted father-in-law, but facing a financial intelligence machine with no blind spots. The phone call with London ended, leaving a state of utter panic enveloping the mansion in Montecito. Meghan immediately rushed down to the basement, throwing open the doors of the large, secure safe designed recessed into the wall. She pulled all the red velvet-covered boxes and suede pouches out onto the floor, beginning a physical cross-check with Buckingham Palace's 89-page list. The red marker in her hand drew each trembling stroke. Pearl necklace, still there. Platinum-rimmed diamond earrings, still there. High-end, gem-embellished evening gowns, still there. But as the list progressed gradually toward the final pages, a horrific truth began to clearly appear before her eyes. The empty velvet boxes became more and more numerous. 40% of the items in the inventory had completely evaporated from the safe. Some large diamonds had been removed from their original settings to be sold piecemeal to private jewelers in Los Angeles to pay security bills. A few limited edition designer watches and bracelets had been used as covert debt collateral to media partners. A number of exquisite antiques simply got lost during the process of moving back and forth between Britain, Canada, and America. Meghan frantically recalculated the value of this missing portion of assets. The worst problem lay in the fact that Buckingham Palace did not calculate the value based on the initial production cost. They applied the current market appraisal price of historical antiques. That missing 40% of assets equated to a colossal debt running up to £4 million. The phone screen displaying the balances from Meghan and Harry's bank accounts could not possibly cover a quarter of this massive figure, especially when income streams from content production had dried up long ago. The total deadlock hit as the May 20th, 2026 deadline was counting down by the hour. On the other side of the ocean, King Charles III's legal department had the dossiers for submission to the International Court ready on their desks. The asset freeze order and extradition request to serve the criminal investigation only awaited exactly one final approval signature if the FedEx package sent back to London did not contain the full 127 items as requested. Meghan sat slumped amidst the pile of empty velvet boxes, realizing that all escape routes had been sealed shut. No cash to compensate, no artifacts to return, no legal team strong enough to fight against the royal legal system. This moment marked the complete collapse of the strategy of using the dynasty's legacy to patch up an unsustainable, lavish lifestyle. When the final deadline closes in and no financial miracle appears, what grim choice will Meghan Markle have to stand before? Declaring bankruptcy before the whole world to protect her last shred of freedom, or accepting stepping into the criminal courtroom and facing a prison sentence? Meghan Markle is locking herself in the 14-bedroom mansion in Montecito, California. The brilliant sunlight of the American West Coast cannot dispel the suffocation inside the stone walls. The communication phone lines between Los Angeles and London have gone completely silent. Her expensive legal team, those who once promised to find every legal loophole, now can only sit with crossed arms, watching the calendar count down to May 20th, 2026. Dozens of empty red velvet boxes lie scattered on the basement floor. Meghan no longer has the full 127 items, nor does she have £4 million of cash in her account to write a cheque to compensate for the damages. The glamorous velvet curtain of a financially independent Duchess has been torn apart, leaving a woman who has to face the risk of having her entire personal assets frozen and being summoned to an international criminal court. On the other side of the ocean, King Charles III still maintains his normal working schedule at Buckingham Palace. Every morning, he wakes up, reads national reports, and prepares for diplomatic receptions. But on the oak desk in his private office, the 89-page dossier still lies there, beside a pre-signed legal submission. The Duchy of Cornwall's legal team and asset recovery experts have booked business-class flights to California. They only wait for exactly 12 midnight on May 20th. The moment the clock strikes into the new day and the FedEx package containing all the assets does not appear in London, the criminal prosecution order will be submitted immediately. King Charles has no intention of picking up the phone to call his son. He maintains absolute silence, letting the British dynasty's legal system operate automatically and crush anyone who dares to take state legacy to pawn. The 89-page ultimatum and the risk of criminal prosecution pose giant question marks about how the royal elite handle internal asset crises. From a legal and financial perspective, is Britain's national asset management regulation truly fair when blatantly stripping away items that were handed over publicly before millions of people? When a royal member leaves, what boundary distinguishes between a gift carrying personal sentimental value and a historical state asset? Is Buckingham Palace reappraising the lost items based on current antique market prices instead of their original value? A ruthless financial trick aimed at obliterating Meghan's ability to pay and forcing her onto the path of bankruptcy. From a moral perspective, is the decision to fire sale the diamonds belonging to the late Princess Diana's collection to cover Meghan's security and personal living expenses an understandable survival move by a mother whose funding source has been cut off? Or is it an act of desecrating the dynasty's most sacred legacy? Can the public continue to support a person who always calls for the protection of women's rights and humanitarian values on television, yet silently dismantles her mother-in-law's keepsakes to trade on the Swiss black market? Most importantly, facing the total collapse of both reputation and personal freedom, which path will Meghan Markle choose? Will she stand before global television lenses, admitting to the fire sale of Diana's legacy to hope for forgiveness from the public and a lenient deal from the palace? Or will she decide to be tough to the end, step into the courtroom in London, using never-before-told backstage stories to drag the entire monarchical system down into the mud with her? Do you think Meghan Markle is truly a victim of a cold and vindictive royal legal system? Or is she having to pay the appropriate price for greed when deliberately fire-selling massive assets that do not belong to her? Please leave your candid opinion right below in the comments section. Hit the channel subscription button today to continue following the developments of this historic lawsuit and join us in turning over the most naked secrets buried beneath the glamorous gold and lacquer layers of the global elite.